Shriners came here in 1871 AD, long before any Moorish science temple came into existence. Rabbi Matthews even calls his temple the Moorish Zionist Temple of the Moorish Jews. This lets you know that he was affiliated with the Moorish Science Temple. Also, if you look at the organization called Ethiopian Hebrew Congregation, in which Rabbi Wentworth Matthew was a practitioner, they have on the first page of their book entitled How the Hebrews Became Jews, and I quote, "To my grandmother, Hannah Melchizedek, granddaughter of a Moroccan Hebrew king," which goes back to the word Moor. Where the word Moroccan came from, the word Moor is derived from the Latin word Maori, meaning a deep dark brown, which is used by the Roman to describe the inhabitants of territory comprising the western portion of modern Algeria and the northeastern portion of modern Morocco. There is another point I found while reading the dedication of this same book. After a telephone conversation with Jose V. Malcolm after reading his book How the Hebrews Became Jews, dedicated to, as he says, my grandmother Hannah Melchizedek, grandmother of a Moroccan Hebrew king who was married to a Scot, Peter Malcolm, and to their child my mother Ada Malcolm. Inserted this dedication to point out the Moroccan involvement, to make the point that Rabbi Matthew was also involved with the original Moorish movement. In the conversation I asked Brother Jose Bermudez Malcolm, where does the white man come from? His answer was, that the white race originated from the Africans, who he said moved to the Caucasian mountain where it was cold and no sunlight, so their melanin didn't develop, and because of this they turned white. As you listen to this story, it does not make any kind of scientific sense. How can blacks, just by virtue of the fact that they migrate to Russia, turn into blonde hair, that is straight hair, from woolly, blue-eyed or red hair, that is straight, green eyes, and auburn and brown hazel or gray eyes? The variations alone proves the theory's wrong. There must be different DNA codes to produce these different strains. Not to mention that Europeans from Holland and Europe have been residing in South Africa for hundreds of years and did not turn back to Africans with woolly hair. Also, if you look closely at the attire of the Moorish Science Temple, you will see it is the same as the Shriners. The nobles wore rich costumes of Eastern character, made of silk, brocaded velvet of Oriental intensity of color, the same attire the Shriners wear. The beliefs changed slightly. Still, the new nation under W.D. Farr kept most of what noble Drew Ali had gotten from the Egyptian shrine, being influenced by one C. Kirkman Bey, also known as Colonel Charles Kirkman Bey, and his nickname being Frog Eyes. The last testament that they fought over, that was claimed, Kirkman kept what was a Shriner's manual from which noble Drew Ali extracted most of his information. When Kirkman was kidnapped, the Chicago police, knowing he was a Shriner and informer, became engaged in a gun battle which resulted with many deaths. Note, Kirkman was a grand potentate of the Sultan Temple in Chicago, and took the oath. Question: are you a noble of the mystic shrine? Answer: I have traveled the Arabic path. Question: you are a noble then, I presume? Answer: I am accepted by all men of noble birth, etc. Make note that if you look on any inflation of the Shriners, you will see that it says, and I quote, his application having been received and accepted in June 1893 in the city of Chicago, Noble Rofelt Pasha. As you can plainly see, these are the names that the Moorish Science Temple uses, proving to you that these men were indeed a part of the Masonic order. Pasha is defined as a title for military and civil officer, especially in Turkey and North Africa, and comes from the Turkish word pasa. And if you notice, these nobles of the Moorish temple call each other by the name Pasha. Now if you look at the same book distributed by the MST, The Great Meeting is on. Quran Questions for Moorish Americans, page 2, under question 34, what is a title given to our ruler in Morocco? Sultan. The same name on the Shriner cap of Brother C. Kirkman Bey. Question 20, what does the 5 points represent? Answer: love, trust, freedom and justice, speaking about the green 5-pointed star on the red flag of Morocco used by the Moorish Science Temple. These are all Masonic and Shriner expressions as found in the sacred rituals of the sacred works of the ancient Arabic order of nobles of the mystic shrine by John G. Jones, Imperial Potentate. The involvement with this sacred order resulted in the elimination of all of the leaders after taking this oath, as recorded in the Master's Carpet, a handbook on Masonic rituals, page 288, says, I hail and I conceal. Question: what do you conceal? Answer: all the secrets of Masons in Masonry, to which this token alludes. They broke their vow by revealing secrets by wearing the apron, taking the pose, the fez, the circle with the 7 in the center, the 7 symbolic of the 7th letter in English alphabet, which is the letter G, and the circle symbolic of the compass, while he stood on a square revealing the Masonic symbol. The clasped hand symbolizing the sacred handshake, the symbol of the all-I-seeing. The sword on the Bible at their temple meetings. The use of the bow tie symbolic of the first pillar Boaz, and the plagiarism goes on. They were plainly and simply playing around with a combination of Masonic teachings, Shriner teachings, Orthodox Islamic teachings, Ahmadiyya Islamic teachings, Christianity, and ancient Egyptian knowledge. The deaths included Noble Drew Ali, who died from injuries that were inflicted upon him during an interrogation while in jail. W. D. Ford, Marcus Garvey, who died on June 10, 1940 AD, and many others. Their students, not knowing the roots of their teachings, split off and gave birth to various groups with distorted versions of the truth that the Shriners had stolen from the great libraries of Alexandria, Egypt, that Deuce Muhammad Ali, an Egyptian Nubian Ansar, Al-Mahdi, from Sudan himself, tried to convey in hopes to lift a downtrodden race of people. Deuce Ali was born in Nubia, Egypt. His father was a distinguished Nubian and his mother Sudanese. Note, he died June 26, 1945 AD. At the moment our master teacher, Dr. Malachi Zodok, was born. At one time, Deuce Ali, an Ansar born in Egypt, Nubia, had given them the true story of the graftation and the history of the Nubians. The Masonic Lodge had, through the Illuminati, obtained ancient documents stolen out of the great libraries of Alexandria of these same stories. But as time went on and it passed from person to person, to men who were not familiar with the ancient languages of Arabic or Hebrew, you ended up with distorted and misrepresented stories. To prove this, in these teachings there was much alterations and innovations. Elijah Muhammad admits that he was uneducated, having only a third-grade education. Thus, stories were unintentionally distorted as well, numbers miswritten, logged and taught, pronunciations were distorted, events got confused, and they lost track of the original holy tablets that contained these stories and their truths. The original story from the ancient tablets of the grafting of the pale race can be found in the Holy Tablets chapter 3, Karama, the scientists. The inscription by Amanubi Ruakta, the supreme being for this renewal of your forgotten history. The elders, 24 in number inclusive of Yaa-Nun, also known as Amanubi Ruakta, gathered in your history, has been renewed in the Holy Tablets. The distorted story contradicts itself in multiple places. Their story of the Caucasians coming from Yakub's grafted devil is full of misinformation and contradictions. For instance, according to Malcolm X's own speech given in December of 1962 AD at New York's Temple No. 7, they teach that John, son of Zebedee, author of the Book of Revelation, who was born in Bethsaida, Palestine, which is not 20 miles outside of Mecca, which Noble Drew Ali in question 53 calls the Garden of Eden, in the land of Canaan in the city of Mecca. And the land of Canaan is nowhere near the city of Mecca in Arabia, but Canaan is in Palestine. They have their geography confused as well as their facts. All of these facts can be found in Supreme Wisdom, Solution to the So-Called Negroes Problem, and the Supreme Wisdom Volume 2 by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. So John was actually born in the year 2 BC and died in 99 AD, and was not born in the year 8400 as this Yakub was supposed to have been born. Yakub was a wicked black scientist, who was born 20 miles outside of the city of Mecca, in the year 8400 and lived for 150 years. And they also say that he was the God, Elohim, of Genesis chapter 1, speaking to his followers whom he had taught to rebel 59,999 of them. But in their own teachings, message to the black man declares that these Elohim were either 7, 12, or 24, called the 24 elders by them, not 59,999 people. And Yakub was supposed to have said to these people, let us make man in our own image, in our own likeness. Which comes from Genesis 1:26. Also they use the quote from the Quran 2:30 and claim that this Yakub was speaking to his uncle and told him that he was going to create a people weak and wicked. And I quote, and when thy Lord, Rabuka, say to angel, Malaikat, I am going to place a ruler, Khalifa, in the earth. They, angels, said, wilt thou place in it such as make mischief and shed blood? And we celebrate thy praise and exalt thy holiness. He said, surely I know what you know not. First of all, in this quote they're saying that Yakub was Allah by giving him the title Rabuka, because of the first revelation of the Quran, in which they read page 1191, the 96th chapter of the Quran, Al-Alaq, the clot. Read in the name of thy Rabuka who created man from a clot. If they go to verse 14, it clearly states, know he not that Allah sees. So in this quote, the Rabuka is Allah. Also you find in the middle of verse 30 of chapter 2. And, we, Nanu, we glorify, Nusabhu, by way of your praise, Bihamka. Point being, if Yakub was talking to his uncle, only as found in message to the blackman, it wouldn't state Nanu we. We is more than one in Arabic. And you teach he was in his uncle's backyard playing with 2 pieces of steel, at the bottom of page 28 of the same book. And by the way, steel is not a natural element. It is not found on the charts. Steel is composed of nickel, chromium, and carbon. This compound did not exist in the year 8400. There are 30 different grades of steel determined by the different alloyed mixture. Steel was first introduced by Charles Michael Schwab, born in Williamsburg, Pennsylvania, born February 18, 1862 AD, and he died September 18, 1939 AD. Steel was introduced in the year 1892 AD. This uncle whom they never name, because Yakub's uncle would have to be Ishmael son of Hagar, Genesis 16:1, or one of the 6 sons of Keturah, also called Rada, namely Madon, Midian, Zimran, Ishbak, Shua, Joktan, Genesis 25:2. Because they also claim in Malcolm X's speech that Yakub is the Jacob of the Bible on page 31, it says, and he says that he got this from the Bible where it says Jacob wrestled with an angel, Genesis 32:24. And they say Jacob was Yakub, and the angel that Jacob wrestled with, wasn't God, it was the government of that day. Noble Drew Ali's interpretation of an angel was more correct. Question 38, what is an angel? Angel is a thought of Allah manifested in human flesh. Question 39, what are angels used for? To carry messages to the four comers of the world to all nations. Then in question 40, they veer off by declaring that Noble Drew Ali is an angel when it asked what is our prophet to us? He is an angel of Allah, who is sent to bring us the everlasting gospel of Allah. So the teachings of what an angel is got confused. And their definition of an angel, and I mean as the Bible Genesis 32:24 says, and Jacob was left alone and there wrestled a man with him until the breaking of day. Point 1 is, it states in Aramaic, Hebrew, ish meaning a male living being, a man, a husband, it's a single not a government. An angel does not mean power. Angel in Aramaic, Hebrew, malak means messenger, representative in Ashuric Syriac, Arabic, malaika means messenger. So it's a misinterpretation and misinformation. And please don't state at this point, that the books you're quoting from, before I make this point, are all tampered with. That's called using things to your own convenience. So this Yakub, according to the teachings of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, as given in Message to the Black Man and taught by Malcolm X, his head minister stated that Jacob, the twin brother of Esau of Genesis 25:26, was a mad scientist born in the year 8400. When Jacob and Esau were actually born, according to the ancient Hebraic records, in the year 1918 BCE and died 1771 BCE, and there's no record of this Jacob traveling to Patmos in the Aegean Sea in Greece. There's no record of him being imprisoned in Mecca. The name Mecca did not even exist in those days. Before it was called Mecca, it was called Becca, Quran 396. So this Yakub could not have been the Elohim of Genesis, the Jacob, twin to Esau, as well as John son of Zebedee of the New Testament. And if they say it's because the scriptures were tampered with, then ask why are you using them? And why is it that you can untangle them and no one else can? It's a lot of unverifiable statements. Things that cannot be checked. Their biggest mistake is they all depend on poor translations. None of them knowing the Hebrew of the Torah or the Arabic of the Quran well enough to see the facts. They quote the King James Version of the Bible 1611 AD, a Caucasian Christian of the Anglican Church, and Maulana Muhammad Ali, a Pakistanian of the Ahmadiyya sect of Islam, whose translation of the Quran for the Ahmadiyya sect was done in 1917 AD. So as you can see, misinformation breeds confused people, and then the 5%ers branched off from the nation of Islam and breed more confused people and write their version of what they think happened, causing more confusion. Let's go on. The world community of Islam under Warith Deen Muhammad, the son of Elijah Muhammad, taught that the Caucasians are from the Jacobites. The point being, none of these groups know or knew until I told them. The Israeli crutch really has no doctrine of their own. They take bits and pieces of everyone else's doctrine and come up with what they call universal practical knowledge. Another group of black Jews, led by Elder Adahan B. Yisrael, who authored the book The Lost Nation, in which he talks about the Negro in North America. He makes the incorrect statement that the pale Horites of today, who are dressed in black suits and hats, are direct descendants of the Edomites. This is totally incorrect. The Reverend S.C. Blackledge, a Nubian Christian, says in the book entitled An Open Book on Hidden Mysteries, long before Reverend Walter Arthur McRae was ordained or most other black movement or organization came into existence, Reverend Blackledge says Adam is a dark, reddish-brown man, and calls Adam an Ethiopian, but he plays a tricky word game by using Ethiopian. Because if you look at the word Ethiopia in the Bible in Genesis 2:13, you will get the word Cush, which means black, not dark reddish-brown. Instead of Reverend S.C. Blackledge D.D. saying that Adam was a black man, he beats around the bush. He deals with Adam being reddish-brown, then throws in Ethiopian. He didn't want to deal with the word Cush. The Reverend S.C. Blackledge D.D. also states in the same book in chapter 2 titled Biblical Thoughts on the Color of the First Man Adam, as given through the scripture, implying that Adam was the first man. And if you look on page 18, second paragraph, it says John said that his hair was white and like lamb's wool, thus representing a black or brown race. And then look on page 71, in chapter 11, this reverend says the 5 races which represents the world today sprang from one family, and are all first cousins, and it is the height of ignorance for any race or human individual to think the race or himself better than any other human race or color. By this statement Reverend S.C. Blackledge D.D. is admitting that Adam was the first black man. And if you continue to read further in chapter 11, page 73, you will see where he says if God had intended that all races marry together and be on earth as one, he would have not scattered them at the Tower of Babel. The point I'm making here is, you have a Nubian Christian in the year 1925 AD long before most of these black organizations or black movements was even thought about, when if you called a Nubian a black man you got in a fight, and it implies right here that there should be no intermarriages. Meaning no one person should marry outside of their race. If Yaa-Nun read this statement carefully, you will notice that he just introduced racism. On page 52 of the same book he mentions that people lived before Adam. And he calls them the pre-Adamic race. Openly admitting what I have been saying is true. On page 55, he also calls Canaan the cursed seed, curse of Canaan. He even shows a picture of Canaan as an albino on this same page 55. Point being, here you have a Christian reverend saying this back in 1925 AD, who does not subscribe to the basic Christian beliefs of today. Something that I have proven to be true in many of my scrolls and can be found in the Bible in Genesis 9:25 and Leviticus chapters 13 and 14. Archbishop George Augustus Stallings Jr., founder of the Imani Temple based in Washington, D.C., and African American Catholic Congregation, AACC, was interviewed by Emerge News Magazine, Volume 6, Number 6, April 19, 95 AD. Stallings, whose interview is featured on page 22, was asked about his views on Jesus being Nubian, and he says the following, and I quote, "If you look in Matthew, chapter 1, 1-17, when you look at the 42 generations of Jesus, 4 women are mentioned in that chart. 3 out of the 4 are either Hittites or Canaanites, almost universally defined by biblical scholars as being dark-skinned black people. You have Tamar, you have Rahab, and Bathsheba, the wife of Uriah." Also Matthew, chapter 2, verse 15, where it says, "Out of Egypt have I called my son." How could it have been possible for a blonde-haired, blue-eyed, thin-nosed, thin-lipped, pale-faced baby to have been hidden among a land of black people in Egypt? Egypt, the name given to that country, on the continent of Africa by Europeans, Egypt means black. Archbishop George Augustus Stallings Jr. makes a truthful statement: Jesus was Nubian. However, the scriptures that he uses, first of all the book of Matthew itself being one from the many chosen by Romans, Caucasians, to make up the 4 synoptic gospels, is not a holy scripture. Christians are not even sure who wrote it or received it. Matthew 10:2-4, 3:16-19, Luke 6:14-16, Acts 1:13 lists Matthew as a disciple. In Matthew 9:9 he is also listed as tax collector and as a politician in Matthew 10:3. Matthew 5:1-2 calls it a sermon on the mount, in Greek oros, mountain, hill, to lift up, to elevate, when Luke 6:17-20 clearly calls it a sermon in the plains, in Greek padinos, a plain, a leveled place. There is a big difference between a mountain and a plain. And the book of Matthew was supposed to be recorded in 41 AD, that would be 8 years after Jesus' supposed crucifixion, in Antioch in Syria. It bears multiple contradictions from the other 3 gospels. Matthew 1:16 says Joseph son of Jacob, Luke 3:12-28 listed as Joseph son of Heli. He is the only one who talks about the Magi, Matthew 2:1-12. His name was Levi. What they are trying to do is get you to focus on the race issue of Jesus, which will appeal to blacks that are tired of the racism and a white God that approves their slavery and abuse. You see the KKK, and other white racist organizations quote the Bible and hold up a white Jesus. All of the blacks that are a part of the Jehovah's Witnesses, which was founded by Charles Taze Russell, Seventh-day Adventist, which was founded by Ellen Gould White, the Mormon Church, whose founder is Joseph Fielding Jr., the Catholic Church, the Worldwide Church of God formerly led by Herbert W. Armstrong, the Rosicrucian Order, founded by Harvey Spencer Lewis, the Astara Order founded by Erline Cheney, the European Masonic Lodges, and the Prince Hall Black Masonic Lodges Order, which was founded by Stonecutters, the Nation of Islam, and the 5% Nation, who all have a white-skinned, straight-haired Christ, Messiah, Mahdi, whether they call him an Israelite or an Arab. So it is easy at this point to paint Jesus black and appeal to an angry and disappointed group of people. But the trick is they use things like the books of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, the book of Revelation, which are Greek translations from whatever language they claim, and will have you not scrutinizing the authenticity of those books or scriptures, but rather focusing on Jesus' race and immediately accepting books written by Caucasians. All you have to do is get the book written by Flavius Josephus or do some research, and they will come to the conclusion simply, who cares? But a dying church, that is the black church, because of a lack of facts, have regressed to using the race card to try to hold or win followers. When most of these ministers were calling Jesus black, they were in their ministry studying or being raised as ministers or sons and daughters of ministers. The Jesus that they worshipped was the white Jesus. This was stamped in their subconscious mind. They accepted it, they believed it, they taught it, they even worshipped this white image. Yet now, after the black rage of the 60s, say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud, they want to pretend blackness while most of them belong to white dioceses or white ministries. They affiliate themselves with organizations who are cheered by white people. Now they want to confuse Nubian children with this new black face of Jesus, and they can't even get together on what face it's going to be. Look at this collage of what has popped up within the last 10 years. All of these so-called black churches are going to be at war soon as to whose drawing of Jesus is more likely to be or represent him. Can't you just give Caucasians back their religions? Because you weren't Christians back in Africa. And according to your own teachings, Christian missionaries brought the religion to Africa, and that includes Ethiopia. And if it was our natural religion, it would have been there with us. Nobody would have to bring it to us. Jesus wouldn't have been born in the Middle East, he would have been born in Africa if he was a god for Africans. You are always eating the crumbs that the white man tosses off his table. More than half of them are not even Christians anymore, and you are still hanging on to the slave man's religion. They use, who they call the man who became a missionary in Ethiopia, namely Matthew. Reverend George Augustus Stallings Jr. uses Matthew 1:1-17, to support his claim, which want you to believe that you are from the cursed seed of Canaan, Genesis 9:25, something originally taught to them by the Mormons and upheld by the Ku Klux Klan today. Nubians are not from the seed of Canaan, which would make them Canaanites. Nor are Nubians from the seed of Heth, which would make them Hittites, as I have proven to you in this scroll and the many others I have written. These black Christian leaders think that after 2,000 years they can just paint him black and that it is alright. After these subliminal pictures of white Jesus has been stamped in the minds of children, you'd have to make this a full-time effort to explain what Jesus looked like, and all of you would have to agree on one story and one picture. And this doesn't help. It doesn't help because it doesn't do anything but confuse the children. Now they are forced to say, look mommy, a black Jesus. That is because in their subconscious mind Jesus is white. It is the same as a black Santa Claus. Just by virtue of the fact that you have to say Santa is black is a confession that you think that he is white. And the only reason you have to say black Jesus is because it means that in the subconscious mind you have already accepted that Jesus is white. Then he mentions 3 out of 4 women, of which he never names the 4th, as further evidence to prove that Jesus was Nubian by saying, when you look at the 42 generations of Jesus. A list he takes from Matthew 1:1-16 from Jesus to Jacob. A list which is contradicted in Luke 3:23-38. It lists from Jesus to Adam, 76 names which he calls generations. 4 women are mentioned in that chart. 3 out of the 4 are either Hittites, Canaanites, almost universally defined by biblical scholars as being dark-skinned black people. You have Tamar, you have Rahab, and Bathsheba, the wife of Uriah. First, let's take the first woman that he named, Tamar, and trace her lineage. If you turn to 2 Samuel 13:1 of your Bible, you will see where it says Tamar is the daughter of David and Maacah. As you know, David is undoubtedly Nubian, Genesis, and Maacah, the mother of Tamar, was the daughter of Talmai, 2 Samuel 3:3, the son of Ammihud, an Ephraimite, 2 Samuel 13:37, the son of Elishama, Numbers 1:10, who was the son of Ephraim, Numbers 1:10, who was the son of Joseph, Numbers 1:10, son of Jacob, Genesis 30:25. They were all Nubian. There is no record or scripture indicating they were Canaanites or Hittites who are Caucasians. The name Rahab, Rakab, is used a total of 10 times in the Old Testament of the Bible. And 8 of them are in reference to a harlot named Rahab of Jericho. Rahab was a prostitute who played a key role in the victory of Jericho, Joshua chapters 2-6. She was married into the family of David by way of Salmon, who was David's great-grandfather. Ruth 4:18-22, 1 Chronicles 2:4-5, 9-11, and she gave birth to Boaz, making her the great-grandmother of David. Rahab is mentioned in the genealogy of Jesus as one of his ancestors, Matthew 1:5. Nowhere does it mention in any of the scriptures that she was Canaanite or Hittite. Nor does it say that Boaz, Jesse, or Obed married Canaanites or Hittites. The Rahab that is spoken about in Psalm 89:10 and Isaiah 51:9, is not to be confused with the Rahab, Rakab, of the book of Joshua. Rahab, as it is used in Psalms 89:10 and Isaiah 51:9, is a symbolic name for Egypt and mythological dragon, and means outrageous, violent, tumult, fierce, storm, arrogance, a sea monster, Leviathan, coming from the root word Rahab, meaning to behave proudly, act stormily, boisterously, to act insolently. Only one of the women that Archbishop Stallings mentioned was indeed a Canaanite, and that was Bathsheba, daughter of Eliam. Iliam was a Gileonite, from the children of Heth, Genesis 23:5, who were from the Canaanite tribes as I have explained earlier in this scroll. If you really listen to what Archbishop George Augustus Stallings Jr. says, it is the same thing that the Israeli Church says. Both groups want to make anybody in the Bible Nubian. Just like the Israeli Church are in desperate need of claiming anyone to be Nubian. Nubians are throughout the entire Bible, however, the Canaanites and Hittites are simply not Nubians. The reason why your scholars want you to believe that Canaan is who you descended from is because he was cursed by his grandfather in Genesis 9:25. Now think, isn't it very convenient for scholars who already are racist and don't want you to know your true identity, to say that you were of a cursed seed and that is why you are in the condition you are in? Then Hebrew Israelites go around quoting Jews as if they really share the same beliefs. There is racism in religion as well. According to Black Biblical Studies written by Reverend Dr. Charles B. Coffer, he gives the explanation of where the Nubian came from by the Jews. Let me quote to you from a collection of Midrashim, the Jewish commentaries on the Hebrew scriptures compiled between 400 and 1200 AD, known as Midrash Rabbah, Genesis 36, 7-8, Babylonian Talmud, Sanhedrin 108b, and Midrash Rabbah Genesis Exil 5-6, who gave his interpretation of the Torah, in reference to Nubians, and I quote, "You have prevented me from begetting a fourth son, therefore your seed will be ugly and dark-skinned." Then it goes on to say, Ham and the dog copulated in the ark, therefore Ham came forth black-skinned, while the dog publicly exposes its copulation. In a book written by Robert Graves and Raphael Patai, entitled Hebrew Myths, the Book of Genesis, relate the passage in Sanhedrin 108b to other sources as Tanhuma Noah 13:15 and produce the following additional narrative. Moreover, because you twisted your head around to see my nakedness, your grandchildren's hair shall be twisted into kinks, and their eyes, red, again, because your lips jested at my misfortune, theirs shall swell, and because you neglected my nakedness, they shall go naked, and their male members shall be shamefully elongated. Men of this race are called Negroes. So you Hebrew Israelites, Israelite Hebrews, or black Jews, should think twice before you go around calling the pale Jews your brothers and thinking that they care about you. Because as you can see from the above commentaries that they are racist and consider Nubians to be cursed. Reverend Dr. Charles B. Coffer covers many of the interpretations that are given to you by so-called scholars as to where the Nubians and Caucasians came from. I am glad to be able to present the facts to you, because it is obvious, by all of the different opinions of the origin of the Nubian and Caucasian, that they don't really know where they actually came from. Hebrew Israelites, Black Jews, Israeli Church, and many other Nubian groups use negative people in the Bible to portray themselves. Look at what you are making yourselves. You are making yourselves footstools of everybody. Why do you all want to be identified with negative people in the Bible? The Moorish Science Temple says that you are descendants of the Moabites through Moab due to incest by way of Lot and his firstborn daughter Lubna. Genesis 19:37, the Hebrew Israelites say you are descendants of Jacob, however Jacob got his birthright by him and his mother Rebekah deceiving his blind father Isaac. Genesis 27:6-30, the Nation of Islam says that you are descendants from the tribe of Shabazz. The name Shabazz is thought by many to be an Ashuric Syriac, Arabic, word. However, it is not. Shabazz is a combination of the Persian word Shah and means king and the Arabic word Baz meaning falcon. The name Shabazz comes from Sheshbazzar and means sun worshippers, or fire worshippers. Zerubbabel is the Babylonian name for Sheshbazzar, the prince of the mixed tribe of Judah. This is where they get the name Shabazz, Ezra 1:8. And even there he had to be a Nubian man but with straight hair. Africa gets played down in all the great empires like Timbuktu, they just ignore like they never existed. What's wrong with you people? Whenever you make Nubians they're always the negative downtrodden people. You are everything but the Egyptians, and anybody can go to Egypt and see Nubians on the wall. You can't go to Jerusalem and see Nubians on the walls of Jerusalem. So why do you even want to identify with these people?